Let's bring into the conversation Washington correspondent for the New York Times, Michael Schmidt. The paperback edition of his book, Donald Trump versus the United States, is out today. Mike, it's good to see you and have you back again. What's your assessment? We haven't talked to you in a few days of where this story has gone. The Biden attorneys, the White House attorneys, have found more documents at his home in Wilmington, Delaware. Republicans, as we've just laid out, are trying to elevate this to be exactly like what Donald Trump did at Mar-a-Lago. How big a problem is this for the White House, and how do you view this as a contrast to what Donald Trump did?
Well, I think you guys laid it out pretty well there, how these are really different examples. One person went to the government and said, hey, I found these classified documents. How can I get them back to you? And the other person put up a months-long fight that got so extreme, and I think we sometimes forget this, that the FBI had to execute a search warrant at the home of a former president. It's just something so extraordinary that, you know, even in Trumpian times, to just think that the FBI had to legally go there with a warrant to get these things back just shows the severity and the differences in it. Having covered a few of these classified document issues, it is following a pattern here on the Biden side where the first few days are extremely bumpy and they don't look like they come off the hands well. There's just disclosure after disclosure. The stories sort of build on each other. And this is very similar to what happened in the aftermath of, you know, the questions about Hillary Clinton. And it is just something that is unusual for the average lawyer in Washington to be dealing with. And because of that, mistakes are made and there's miscommunications and missed signals and stuff with the press, and questions begin. And people say, well, why didn't they tell us this before? Or why does this seem different today than it did before? And why are there more documents today than there were yesterday? So in that sense, it is something that happens in these early days of these matters and that turn into these investigations where the person who found the documents, really, and those around them really struggle to tell that story in a way that sort of narratively builds on itself and looks like what they know what they're doing.
Hey, Michael, it's Jonathan. Two questions for you. First is, what can you tell us about anything we know in terms of the contents of these documents recovered in the various Biden locations, the dozen or so? Anything we know at all about that? And then secondly, now this is in the hands of a special counsel. Just walk us through what happens next in terms of a timeline and methods the special counsel may be using.
So this special counsel will be inheriting the beginnings of this investigation from a U.S. attorney in Chicago who started the inquiry, but is leaving the department. And this new special counsel will come in and will learn all the work that's been done up to this point. The special counsel sort of operates like a pop-up U.S. attorney's office. It will not be that big. It will not be as big as a major U.S. attorney's office, but some staff will be added, and they will look at this. They will look, well, how did these documents end up where they did? Why did they end up there? What were the reasons for that? And they'll look at those reasons through the lens of just trying to understand, like, what were these documents being used for, to understand and make sure that there was nothing nefarious that was going on here. Many times with classified documents and such like this, you know, the person or someone had taken them somewhere because they were trying to finish reading them to prepare for a briefing, or they were taking them to work on a book or something along those lines. And because of that, the government will want to know who had these documents at all points. They'll want to look at the fingerprints on them to see who touched them, to ensure that they know everyone who had access to them, to make sure that national security wasn't jeopardized, and if it was, to take measures to protect that. They'll look at the information in the document and say, okay, like, how sensitive is this? And is this publicly known? And do we need, is there, you know, in the most extraordinary of situations, and we don't have any indication this is the case here, you know, is there a source that has to be protected or extracted because of that? The possibilities can go on forever, but they will look to understand, what is this information? Who had access to it? What measures need to be taken to ensure that national security has not been damaged because of this.
All right, the book Donald Trump versus the United States is out now in paperback. Michael Schmidt, thank you so much.